Karl Wallenda. It was an early morning on March 22, 1978. On live television, 73-year-old Karl Wallenda stands on top the Condado Plaza Hotel in San Juan, Puerto Rico, ready to perform his famous wire walk in front of the world. Behind their screens, fans wait in anticipation, hoping to witness one of Karl's classic nail-biting performances, something he's done hundreds of times over his 60-year career. Routine to his other performances, he takes a sip of water and kisses his wife goodbye, hoping to return just minutes later from the daring stunt. He takes his first steps as planned, even showboating to the people below despite the strong winds that day. As he nears the halfway point, everything starts to change. A sudden gust of wind hits. He was once the world's best wire walker, but his age dulled his sharp footwork. Panic flashes across his face and he stares down, struggling to keep his balance, afraid of what would happen if he falls. He glances towards his family for support. One of them shouts at him to crouch, desperately trying to save him. With no options left, he crouches, fighting to keep his balance. Every muscle trembles as he lowers his center of gravity. Just as relief settles over the crowd, an even stronger gust of wind sweeps through. His left foot slips, throwing him off balance. As a last resort, he reaches for the wire, desperately trying to hold on. Karl's fingers slip from the sweat, and he plunges 10 stories down as the crowd watches in fear, crashing to the ground right at their feet. Paramedics come to his side and find a heartbreaking scene. His body shattered, the crowd frozen in disbelief. They rush him to the hospital, but it's too late. He's pronounced dead on arrival. Tom Pryce. It was March 5th, 1977. The air over Kyalami Circuit in South Africa shimmered with heat. The roar of Formula One engines echoed through the hills as cars sped past over 160 miles per hour. Among them was a rising star, Tom Pryce, a 27-year-old Welsh driver known for his quiet confidence and raw speed. It was lap 22, a routine race, until it wasn't. Far down the main straight, a small fire had broken out in another car, his ATS teammate Renzo Zorzi. Two marshals ran across the track carrying fire extinguishers, which proved to be a fatal mistake. They were young, barely trained, and unaware that Pryce was coming over the hill at full speed. In a split second, one of the marshals crossed directly into his path. With no time to react, Pryce's car struck the marshal at over 200 miles per hour. The impact was catastrophic, instantly killing the marshal. But that wasn't even the worst part. The fire extinguisher he was carrying flew through the air, striking Pryce in the head at over 170 miles per hour. The force killed him instantly. As Tom sat lifelessly in his car, it continued hurling down the track before crashing into the barrier. The crowd fell silent. Commentators' voices faded into disbelief. When the wreckage finally stopped, all that remained was the haunting reality of what had just happened. 2 lives lost in a split second of misjudgment. Allison Parker and Adam Ward. On the morning of August 26, 2015, the town of Monetta, Virginia was just waking up. The sun was out, the water at Smith Mountain Lake was calm, and the local news team at WDBJ7 was preparing for the breakfast show. Reporter Allison Parker smiled at the camera. Beside her, Adam Ward adjusted the focus. They had done this hundreds of times before. Small-town stories, light-hearted interviews, local charm. Nothing about that morning seemed unusual, at least not yet. Halfway through the interview, a flash of movement appeared behind the camera. A man stepped out of the shadows. Former reporter Vester Lee Flanagan II, known on air as Bryce Williams. Flanagan had once worked at WDBJ7. 2 years earlier, he had been fired for his anger issues and erratic behavior, blaming the station for what he called racial discrimination and harassment, filing a lawsuit that was eventually dismissed. As he approaches Allison and Adam, he steps in frame and raises his gun. The live feed never stopped. Viewers heard 7 sharp pops echo through their televisions, then screams, then static. Flanagan had filmed the attack himself using a body camera and minutes later uploaded the footage online. Within hours, millions of people around the world had witnessed the unthinkable, the murder of 2 journalists live on television. After the shooting, he fled down the highway in a rental car, chased by police. As the pursuit closed in, he shot himself. Nicolae Ceauşescu. It was December 1989, and the streets of Romania were beginning to boil. For 24 years, Nicolae Ceauşescu had ruled with an iron fist, a man who demanded applause and built palaces while his people starved. But that winter, the cheering finally stopped. Protests erupted after his secret police opened fire on civilians. Bodies were left in the streets. And instead of stepping back, Ceauşescu did what he always did. He went on television. He called for a mass rally in Bucharest, a spectacle meant to prove his people still loved him. Little did he know, a riot started. The cameras shook as people broke through the barricades, rushing towards the building. Ceauşescu froze, realizing his power was gone. Columns of workers marched toward the Capitol, carrying banners, chanting his name, but not in praise. When soldiers were told to open fire, they refused and joined the protesters. By noon, hundreds of thousands had surrounded the Central Committee building. Ceauşescu and his wife, Elena, escaped by helicopter just minutes before the crowd broke inside. The army abandoned them mid-air. Their pilot, pretending to be loyal, told them that they were being hunted. He landed in an open field and left them behind, and they were captured. Just like that, the most powerful couple in Romania became prisoners. Within days, a new government was formed and staged an extraordinary military tribunal, a trial broadcasted to the world. It lasted less than 2 hours. They were charged with genocide, corruption, and destroying the nation. When the verdict came, it was simple: death by firing squad. Minutes later, the Ceauşescus were taken outside into a cold, concrete courtyard. They stood against a wall. The cameras rolled. The soldiers raised their rifles, and the gunfire echoed through the barricades as their bodies hit the ground. Bud Dwyer. It's January 22nd, 1987 in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. Outside, snow drifts against the state capitol building. Inside, the atmosphere is tense. State Treasurer R. Bud Dwyer is hosting a routine press conference. Reporters from all over the county gather because for the past 4 months, Dwyer had been at the center of a corruption scandal. He was accused of accepting a $300,000 bribe while awarding a state contract. Dwyer faced up to 55 years in prison, but despite his conviction, he maintained his innocence to the very end. At 10:30 a.m., Dwyer steps up to the podium. Cameras flash. Microphones hum. He begins reading from a prepared statement, calm and deliberate. He speaks about his trial, his family, his faith, and his despair of what he called an injustice. Then his tone changes. He pauses. He reaches into the manila envelope. Then the room goes silent. Inside is a revolver. Reporters shout. Aides plead him to stop, but Dwyer shakes his head, saying, "Please stay back. This will hurt someone." What happens next is one of the most shocking moments ever broadcasted on live television. Even decades later, the image of that day remains burned into history.